a symbol of freedom and democracy. Hello, I'm the Statue of Liberty. I represent Lucifer, the light bearer, sent to lead humans astray. My crown's 7 points. The 7 deadly sins I encourage you to indulge in. My torch? Lucifer's light I shine to misguide you. The freedom I offer isn't freedom under God, but from God. For centuries, I've been part of a hidden Luciferian agenda. When France gifted me to America, it seemed an act of friendship. But it was a Trojan horse, a brilliant scheme to insert sinister symbolism into the heart of the world's greatest democracy. Few know the truth, that I secretly welcome demons and pagan gods to the new world. Under my skirts, witches gather and chant by moonlight, weaving spells to bind the souls of this nation. In my right hand, I hold chains and shackles, not a torch. My face is stern not because I'm determined to enlighten the world, but because I'm focused on humanity's enslavement. But now you know the truth. Spread the word, before my evil scheme achieves its wicked ends.
This is one of the most serious videos we've done in a while. Ladies and gentlemen, just like what happened with Venezuela, our financial system here in the United States and many Western civilizations is about to go down. When I say that, Putin had a speech recently. We showed it in our thing. They're talking about BRICS, getting away from the US dollar or the euro, getting all these countries to say we're no longer going to use the euro or the US dollar in trade, marketing, and so forth around the world. This is not only a huge tactical move because it's a beast system implementation of the New World Order, including the social credit score and the complete police state world that is ahead of us in due time. We're witnessing the systematic setup with these Russian ships and our military and many things going down right now on the chessboard of this thing we call the world, the planet, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the start, all right? We saw the 5G being implemented, military-grade implementation. We saw Starlink around the world. BRICS is huge, and Putin is in front of his world leaders telling everyone what's going down.
В западных элитах очень сильно желание заморозить существующее положение, несправедливое положение вещей в международных делах. Они привыкли столетиями набивать брюхо человеческой плотью, а карманы деньгами. Но они должны понять, что бал вампиров заканчивается.
我命令全军各级要强化练兵备战，鲜明导向， 坚定不移把军事训练摆在战略位置，作为中心工作，抓住不放，抓出成效。要坚持领导带头，以上率下，坚持实战实训，连战连训，坚持按纲施训，从严治训。
We're working on shaping an independent payment system free from political pressure, abuse, and external sanctional interference. In this regard, I'd like to remind you that this year, BRICS was joined by new participants, that is, Saudi Arabia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Ethiopia. With this, the share of our association in global GDP has reached 36%, and the population of the planet has reached 45%. And BRICS has tremendous potential for joining of new participants, and such drive of stakeholders from different continents can only be welcomed by us, and will support it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're witnessing prophecy being fulfilled at the highest rates. And if you don't remember Venezuela, it can happen to us just like it did to them. War makes money. Don't ever forget that. And again, we are witnessing a transition of powers in play. And they're telling us to our faces every day, the optics are high. Much love. If you want to help me out, hit the PayPal, Snappy Snaps PayPal, or Snappy Snap 007 Cash App. From the bottom of my heart, it helps more than you know. Thank you, and let's continue.
Because the world is using our currency, and we can do that as long as they use our currency. But I think it's going to end at some point. They're going to quit using our dollars as reserve currency. I mean, I watched your interview with Putin, and one of the things, whether you hate him or not, one of the things he said that is true is when we sanctioned him, before we sanctioned Russia, 70% of their transactions were in US dollars. And after the sanctions, it's less than 20% of their transactions are in US dollars. So what we're doing with all these sanctions, ironically, we're shooting ourselves in the foot every time we sanction a country and say you can't use our currency to have a transaction. We're taking away our ability to charge them 3% for that transaction, because when we print 3% more dollars, we're just taking that money.
And we're also sending a really clear signal, which is the dollar's not safe for you.
Right.
It's the reserve currency because it's a safe haven, because it's a stable country. It's the most stable country in the world. And we're not going to weaponize the dollar, because that would be shooting ourselves. But suddenly we are.
And they'll tolerate like 3% because we're not backed by dollars. We're backed by aircraft carriers right now. So they'll sort of tolerate that 3%. But one of the things we recently did in Congress, we passed something called the Repo Act, where we said we're just going to seize all of Russia's sovereign assets in the United States. Well, it turns out a lot of that is treasury debt that they've agreed to buy. so that they can hold dollars. And here's the problem with that. When people see that we've seized their money that they gave us in exchange for these treasury notes, then other countries won't want to buy our debt. It's already happening. And the price of a long-term bond that the treasury puts out it's already gone above 4%. It's like over 4.5%. And they don't want to buy them anymore because, we probably wouldn't seize Great Britain's assets, but I could see us seizing China's assets.
Why that seems like theft. Just like take a country's assets. That belongs to the people of the country, right? It's not just Putin.
It is theft. Like, it's immoral, but even if you're okay with the amorality or immorality of it, it's short-sighted because eventually it'll catch up with us.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at what happened with Venezuela and other countries. Straight up just throwing their cash, what they considered cash, banknotes, away on the ground. They become artistic things and kids' toys. Ladies and gentlemen, the optics are high.
El único país donde la plata la botan en fajo. En fajo, bebé. República Bolivariana de Venezuela. Mire cómo está la plata, mire cómo está el billete, mire. Miren, bebé. Ay, dolor, me volviste a dar. Qué lujo, qué lujo. Qué lujo, qué lujo. El lujo, el lujo, el lujo. Miren el lujo, miren el lujo.
Thick wads of banknotes in Venezuela are now worth next to nothing due to the sky-high levels of inflation. Venezuela's currency has lost so much value that people simply throw away their bills. In response to the economic crisis, local artists have been inspired to create bags, hats, and even pieces of art out of the worthless paper with an aim to sell them in exchange of real money. Venezuela's currency, Bolivar, has plunged more than 80% as the central bank restarted currency auctions for the first time since August. This is a part of its efforts to ease a severe shortage of dollars and clamp down on hyperinflation.
Nosotros no hacemos nada con esos billetes. Pero yo para no botarlo, hice y agarré mi práctica y empecé a hacer bolso y cartera.
Sorpresa la mía que cuando subo esa imagen a las redes sociales, a Instagram, tiene un furor casi inmediato. La aceptación que tiene en la gente fue inmediata y a partir de la primera semana de trabajo ya tenía casi intervenido más de 70, 80 billetes. O sea, me enamoré del proyecto, por así decirlo.
I don't know who needs to hear this. Wake up. Wake up. What is going on? I'm not understanding how we could be going through potentially a crisis, like a serious crisis, where the BRICS nation is combining their money together to devalue the American dollar, which means that if we wanted to buy something over in these countries, whether it's Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, if we was to go over there and try to purchase something for $1, guess how much we're going to have to give them? $55 US to their $1. Do you not understand what is going to happen to our economy if that happens? We were just sitting here complaining about eggs $10. Can you imagine how much we're going to have to pay now? If we went to one of these countries and wanted to buy $20, 20 of their dollars worth of goods, do you know how much we're going to have to pay? That's $1,100 for a $20 item. So in layman's terms, that basically means, listen, these countries not messing with the U.S. no more. They're not trading the way that they used to trade. They don't care about nothing. They flip that coin. They're like, we're not having it no more. So now we're subjected to inflation like crazy. Our rent, we talking about rent now. We're not going to be able to afford rent. Food, forget about it. That's probably half my check right now, just on food, clothes, electronics, oil, like everything that the U.S. was getting from these countries is going to be more than double. Can you imagine living like that? But yet nobody's talking about it. Yet it's under the radar. Yet it's not all over the news. It's not breaking news. This is what they're trying to do to us. None of that is going on. This is why they're distracting you with the fires, all of these wildfires that they're creating, but we're not going to get into all of that, right? We're not going to get into all of that they're creating. So now me, my family, you and your family is subjected to nothing. Like nothing. Basically, because they're not going to increase our pay. You know they're not going to do that. You know Biden don't mess with us like that. You know he do not mess with us like that. So it's not like we're going to get an increase in pay to cover all of these outrageous costs. So what you think going to happen? What do you think going to happen? I'm going to leave that up to your imagination. Because let's not forget, these elites don't care. They're not affected. Whatever happens over here, trust me, they're covered. They make sure that they're covered. They don't care about the little people. We're the little people. They don't care. Oh, and the rich, y'all not exempt. Y'all is not exempt. Because the taxes y'all gonna have to pay, and to live this lavish lifestyle that you want to live, they're going to be taxing the living daylights out of you. The living daylights out of you. Y'all are going to be feeling like us. Y'all are really going to be feeling like us. And we're going to be feeling like the homeless, because that's ultimately what's going to end up happening. Oh, and if you're my color, forget about it, because they've been defecating on us for years. So, you know, they not handing out not one thing. If we do not stand together now, we are going to be in serious trouble. Y'all thought we was going through a spiritual warfare. It's about to get real, okay? Really real. And the distractions is working just like how they want it to work. Y'all are basically doing their job for them. Y'all need to wake up, because life as you know it today will all change August 22nd. Wake up.
So BRICS nations are actually working on their own currency, and now we say that the BRICS currency is going to be valued on $55. That's right, one BRICS currency equals $55. So apparently the BRICS nations just pulled a massive reverse card against America and the Western countries. So let's see the impacts of that. First, what that's going to do to the price of imports for the United States. So that's going to substantially increase the price of imports, not only for the US dollar, for the majority of G7 countries that are now going to be in a weaker position. So the US dollar was the dominant currency, was actually the global reserve currency. So this week, the Saudis deal just ended, establishing that the whole trading in oil was made in US dollars. And now we just see that the US dollar is getting weaker. The purchasing power keeps going down. And also now we have this huge news. The BRICS currency is going to be worth 55 per one. So the cost of imports is actually going to skyrocket and put the US dollar in a very weak position. Now you have to import goods. It's already happening that the BRICS nations are trading goods using their own currencies, meaning that Russia and China using Chinese yen and Russian ruble, no longer relying on the US dollar that has been instrumentalized in the last decade. And then you have simultaneously central banks stocking gold at all-time highs, with gold following, the price of gold actually falling and making new all-time highs. Have the central banks, especially from BRICS nations, that they seem to be getting ready for something that even allows us to speculate if this currency is going to be blockchain-based, and if this currency is actually going to be backed by something tangible like gold to actually make the pair so strong against the US dollar. And then we have Russia and China dumping US bonds, everything happening at the same time. That for me is a clear indicator that we are about to watch a major shift transformation is coming where the US dollar is no longer going to be the world's reserve currency. I'm very curious to how this is going to unfold and also which role is going to have XRP on that, because we all know that BRICS nations already tested on the XRP ledger. We have Central Bank of Russia successfully testing on the XRP ledger. So let's keep an eye on how this is going to interact with blockchain technology. See you guys in the next video.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know, the world stage is being set. The anaconda tight squeeze optics are in play. They are gently squeezing and suffocating as they're implementing the world stage optics. There's more. The petrodollar with Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, remember, they signed a lot of U.S. contracts, the WWE and so much other things. But now that the world stage is saying, hey, screw the US dollar, screw the euro, there's some optics in play, ladies and gentlemen.
Just the other day, June 9th, 2024, the world changed. The 50-year agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia and the petrodollar officially came to an end. But why? And what does the end of the petrodollar mean for the rising new political order? I'm Dr. Steve Turley, your patron professor, and we're going to find out precisely what's going on with the petrodollar and how it will affect us going forward. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's dive right in. With the end of the gold standard in the 1970s, the United States struck a deal with Saudi Arabia to standardize oil prices according to the U.S. dollar. In many ways, this deal, more than anything else, elevated the U.S. dollar to the world's reserve currency, since with dollars you could buy oil and gas directly without going through some kind of exchange rate. So that's what a petrodollar in effect is. It's the pricing of oil according to the U.S. dollar rather than gold or some other currency. But since then, the world, of course, has gone through a dramatic restructuring. And nowhere was that restructuring more on display than in August of last year, when 67 nations gathered together in the South African city of Johannesburg for the 15th annual BRICS Summit. It turns out it was a summit like no other. The 5 foundational BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, announced that they were expanding the pact with the integration of 6 new nations into the fold: Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, Iran, Ethiopia, and Argentina. Now, as you can see from the map, BRICS literally overnight transformed into the single largest economic and political bloc on the planet. The global GDP purchasing power parity, the new BRICS Plus, is now larger than the G7. BRICS controls nearly 40% of the world's GDP, and the bloc now encompasses nearly half of the world's population. And among those were now the OPEC nations of Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE. What this means is that BRICS Plus literally overnight became an oil and gas superpower. According to Infotech, BRICS now controls 39% of global oil exports, 46% of proven reserves, and 48% of all oil produced globally. 1 in every 2 barrels of oil produced on the planet comes from a BRICS member nation. Russia and Saudi Arabia alone account for a quarter of the world's oil production, and Russia and Iran hold the world's first and second largest gas reserves in the world, respectively. Now, this is an economic and commodity dominance that was not even imaginable a few short years ago. So now with BRICS Plus, we've got all the ingredients, as it were, of a new global political and economic order. Half the world's population, 40% of the world's GDP, and an oil and gas exporting superpower. So with that kind of global infrastructure, what's the next obvious logical step? Well, we didn't have to wait long for it. At the heart of that August summit, Russian President Vladimir Putin called on all member nations to agree on a single settlement currency, most likely backed by gold, as the primary means of challenging the US dollar in this new political and economic order. And that's precisely what these nations have been doing. India and the UAE signed a trade agreement in July of last year that settles transactions in rupees rather than dollars, which includes oil and gas. Saudi Arabia and China have also agreed to price some of Saudi Arabia's oil sales in the yuan, the Chinese currency, rather than dollars or euros. And a comparable deal was reached between Brazil and Saudi Arabia some months back as well. And so, as you can see, as it turns out, the petrodollar has really been unraveling for quite some time now. But what does all of this mean for us? Well, first and foremost, we have to understand that the petrodollar, in many respects, was really at the heart of the US dollar functioning as the world's reserve currency. And we're already beginning to see that status wane. Take, for example, this headline in Forbes from just last week. The Fed quietly admits gold is replacing the dollar. And this is because, as we can see, more and more nations, particularly BRICS nations, are starting to turn away from the dollar as the world's reserve currency. And so it's no surprise that central banks around the world are ditching the dollar and gobbling up gold like never before. And that's why the price of gold is expected to continue to climb, because when all is said and done, more and more nations are turning back to the timeless value of gold and silver. You know, that's why we have as one of our wonderful friends and sponsors, the amazing of the dollar in the end mean for us. Well, what we have to understand is that the petrodollar didn't just change the world, it actually changed our nation. For decades, nations buying and selling oil in US dollars turned around and bought up US Treasury bonds. They didn't want to lose their dollars in the exchange process when it got turned back to their own currency. So the buying up of debt allowed our government to print up pretty much as much money as they wanted, because they could, in effect, distribute the dollars out to the rest of the world, again, in the form either of U.S. treasuries or in the form of cash for them to continue to buy up oil. But what happens when the world doesn't need that cash anymore? What happens when they've largely stopped buying our bonds? Well, without the world using dollars and buying up our debt, that diffusing mechanism largely disappears. And we're seeing what happens in real time with the printing up of more and more money without being able to spread it out to the rest of the world. Inevitably, inflation rates go up. Once inflation rates go up, the Fed tries to make it more expensive to borrow money here at home in order to knock the inflation rate back down, which requires the raising of interest rates. Raising those rates has had an enormous stress in our banking industry, which over the last 15 years has invested in a booming bond market, assuming that low interest rates were the new norm. The sudden spike in our interest rates and the collapse of the bond market is one of the reasons we've witnessed the colossal financial collapses of Silvergate Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and the New York-based Signature Bank. And it's not just the financial system. Higher interest rates at the banks means higher interest rates on credit cards, mortgages, car loans. And as you can see, day to day, we're living more and more in the midst of a cost of living crisis, where the prices of gas and groceries continue to surge. Now, there is some good news in all of this. With much of the world turning away from buying up U.S. bonds, our government is simply not going to be able to continue to print money so recklessly anymore. And without being able to print money recklessly, it's going to be harder and harder to send money overseas, like with the insane funding we've been seeing with Ukraine. It's equally going to be harder and harder to maintain the mass spending in general, which might mean that we might end up seeing our government have to begin to live within its means again. Also, the dollar remains very strong, far stronger than any other international currency, and promises to remain the go-to choice among international investors and their portfolios for the foreseeable future. And like we saw earlier, this changing world order is causing a boom in the gold market, such that real money based on commodity and real estate is finally returning as a central part of a growing number of patriots' financial strategies. So again, that's why you need to make sure.
On June 9th, 2024, Saudi Arabia announced it would not renew the petrodollar agreement. This decision reflects a broader trend of de-dollarization, where countries are increasingly seeking to reduce their dependence on the US dollar for international trade. This shift is part of Saudi Arabia's strategic move to diversify its economic partnerships and align more closely with emerging economic powers like China and the BRICS nations. In this video, We discuss this breaking news and how it could impact the U.S. economy and dollar valuation. The petrodollar system emerged in the early 1970s during a period of economic instability in the United States. After President Richard Nixon ended the gold standard in 1971, which previously tied the value of the U.S. dollar to gold, the country faced rising inflation and deficits. In response to these economic pressures, the U.S. sought a new method to stabilize its economy and currency. In 1973, U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger brokered a strategic deal with Saudi Arabia. Under this agreement, Saudi Arabia would sell its oil exclusively in U.S. dollars, in exchange for U.S. military protection and access to advanced weaponry. This arrangement was subsequently adopted by other OPEC nations, creating a robust global demand for the U.S. dollar. The agreement stipulated that the U.S. would provide military support and protection to Saudi Arabia. In return, Saudi Arabia agreed to conduct its oil sales exclusively in U.S. dollars. This ensured that global oil transactions were carried out in dollars, creating a continuous demand for the currency and solidifying its status as the world's primary reserve currency. This arrangement facilitated a steady influx of capital into the U.S. economy, helping finance its deficits and maintain lower interest rates through the process of petrodollar recycling, where oil revenues were reinvested in U.S. Treasury securities. This created a symbiotic relationship with oil-rich nations supporting U.S. debt while enjoying U.S. military protection. This system provided several significant benefits to the U.S. By ensuring that oil transactions were conducted in dollars, the demand for U.S. currency increased globally. This allowed the U.S. to print more dollars without the constraints imposed by the gold standard. Consequently, this arrangement enabled the U.S. to finance its deficits more effectively and maintain lower interest rates, as oil-producing countries invested their surplus dollars in U.S. debt securities. The economic context of the early 1970s underscores the importance of the petrodollar system. For instance, during the oil crisis triggered by the 1973 Arab-Israeli War, OPEC's oil embargo led to a fourfold increase in oil prices, highlighting the necessity for a stable transaction currency. By 1974, oil prices had skyrocketed from $3 to $12 per barrel, further solidifying the petrodollar system's role in global finance. Moreover, the petrodollar system allowed the U.S. to purchase oil with its own currency, which it could print as needed. This unique advantage distinguished the U.S. from other nations and supported its economic stability by ensuring continuous global demand for the dollar. Despite its benefits, the petrodollar system has faced challenges over time. Some countries have explored alternatives to using the U.S. dollar for oil transactions, potentially disrupting the established framework. Nevertheless, the petrodollar system remains a cornerstone of U.S. economic strategy and global financial dynamics. By creating a continuous demand for the U.S. dollar, the petrodollar system has played a crucial role in sustaining the global dominance of the U.S. currency and supporting the American economy through increased liquidity and investment in U.S. debt. The petrodollar system, established in the 1970s, included a process known as petrodollar recycling. This involved oil revenues from Saudi Arabia and other OPEC nations being reinvested in U.S. Treasury securities. This arrangement provided the U.S. with a consistent influx of capital, which was essential for financing its deficits and maintaining lower interest rates. This created a mutually beneficial relationship, where oil-rich nations helped fund U.S. debt, while receiving U.S. military protection and advanced weaponry in return. Let's take a quick pause. Could you do us a favor? If you enjoy our content, please hit the like button. To help even more, leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Your engagement helps us grow. Thank you. The U.S. economy may face increased volatility without the consistent demand for its currency provided by the petrodollar system. This instability could result in significant fluctuations in exchange rates and financial markets, affecting overall economic stability. The previous stability afforded by the petrodollar system helped to smooth international trade transactions and provided a reliable market for U.S. debt. Without it, the U.S. could experience more economic shocks and less predictable financial conditions. With a decreased global demand for the dollar, inflation rates in the U.S. are likely to rise. The Federal Reserve may need to increase interest rates to combat this inflation, which would make borrowing more expensive for both consumers and businesses. This scenario mirrors past instances where reduced confidence in the dollar led to inflationary pressures and higher interest rates to maintain economic balance. Higher interest rates resulting from the need to control inflation will lead to increased costs for various types of borrowing, including mortgages, auto loans, student loans, and credit cards. As the cost of borrowing rises, consumer spending and economic growth are expected to slow down. This increased cost of debt can lead to reduced investment by businesses and lower consumer confidence, further dampening economic activity. The U.S. might face significant challenges in financing its national deficit without the support of the petrodollar system. Higher interest rates will increase the cost of servicing the national debt, putting additional pressure on the federal budget. This could lead to larger budget deficits and potentially necessitate cuts in government spending or increases in taxes to balance the budget. A reduced global demand for the dollar could lead to its depreciation. A weaker dollar would make imports more expensive, affecting the purchasing power of American consumers and potentially leading to higher prices for goods and services. This depreciation could also affect the U.S.'s ability to maintain its standard of living and economic influence globally. The decreased value of the dollar might also reduce the attractiveness of U.S. financial assets, leading to lower investment inflows. By examining the implications of losing petrodollar status, it becomes clear that this transition could have profound and wide-ranging impacts on the U.S. economy, affecting everything from inflation and borrowing costs to national financial stability and international economic influence. The BRICS countries are actively working to decrease their reliance on the U.S. dollar. This strategic shift includes exploring alternative currencies and financial systems for international trade. For example, India recently made a historic purchase of 1 million barrels of oil from the UAE using rupees instead of US dollars. Additionally, Russia has conducted significant trade with India in local currencies, including a $4 billion arms deal paid in rupees. Decline in the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. The shift by BRICS countries away from the US dollar is contributing to its decline as the dominant global reserve currency. This trend is accelerated by the expansion of the BRICS alliance to include new members such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Iran, Argentina, and Ethiopia, starting in 2024. The movement towards local currencies in international trade poses a challenge to U.S. financial hegemony and has the potential to reshape the global economic landscape. U.S. responses: raising interest rates. In response to the declining dominance of the U.S. dollar, the U.S. might raise its federal fund rate to attract more foreign investment and maintain demand for the dollar. However, this strategy has inherent risks. Higher interest rates could potentially slow domestic economic growth and lead to financial instability. Balancing these factors will be crucial for the U.S. to maintain its economic position. This shift in global trade dynamics underscores the evolving nature of international finance and the growing influence of the BRICS alliance. The diversification of currencies in global transactions highlights a significant transition away from the traditional dollar-dominated financial system.
We are Anonymous Sudan. Today, we are a direct threat to all European banks. European banks, you will soon be witnessing the most powerful cyber attack in the recent history of the world. Be prepared, because when we strike, it will be too late to make amends. Many European banks will be targeted and we will hit without mercy.
World has gone mad. The reason for this is money. If God rules Russia, then who rules Europe? That's right, the banking system. No money, no problem. Revel is sufficiently familiar with the European financial infrastructure. See you soon.
This is not a DDoS attack. Games are over. We call on all active groups to engage in destructive activities against the European banking system. No money, no weapons, no Kiev regime. This is the formula for the death of Nazism, and it will work. Within 48 hours, we are launching this global company. Nothing will save you, and this is not a warning. I am just informing you. You have never seen such problems before. We are killing it.
Now, we've been witnessing farms go up in fire, poultry, big productions go up in fire. This is a big fire, right? Now, we've been witnessing DEW optics all around the world, but here in Reno, Nevada, a huge fire just recently broke out, right? You know what's interesting? Isn't the U.S. Treasury out here as well? The optics are high.
They have more zoom in.
Idaho was supposed to be like this big potato, conservative, you know, live that rural life kind of a place. But if you've been following the stuff that's been going on in Idaho lately, something's that the tides are changing in Idaho. In the last couple of videos, we've been talking about how they've been culling the chickens because of the bird flu. And I want you guys to understand too that they're using the PCR test for that. And I want you to go do your homework on how reliable that test actually is. Okay, and you guys got to start peeling open this onion. On May 16th, just a short while ago, news surfaced of an outbreak at Hendricks Poultry in Iona County, and the company announced 400 layoffs and that 6.5 million poultry likely will be killed to stop the spread in Iona County alone. Nearly 91 million poultry in the U.S. are affected, with outbreaks in 48 states as of Friday, according to the Center of Disease Control. Additionally, 9 states, including Michigan, have reported outbreaks of the avian flu in cattle, and with 49 herds across the U.S. are impacted. Okay, I have more here. Don't go anywhere now. I'm telling you guys, they are coming for this food system, and they're coming for the homesteaders. Please understand me when I'm telling you. The whole deal, they have to control all of the food or it's not going to work. This is going to be a kind of a slow, fast process, right? It's not going to happen like overnight or anything, but they are moving towards that right now at record speed. And they're going to use this stuff to get you there through the fear and everything.
And so I'd rather have to do at least something with them instead of just killing them and throwing them out.
Is that what they wanted you to do, is kill the chickens and throw them out?
Well, if they didn't know for sure what they could work out, but they didn't want us to sell any live chickens anyway.
Yeah. Wow. I doubt it had to do with somebody reselling. I don't think
I don't really think that's the bottom line.
They don't get sick because you don't take care of them. They eat on the, I mean, they get weak and they die. If you don't feed them and take care of them, they get weak and they die. But they don't get, I mean, wow. When they told that to all the Amish farmers out here?
Well, it's cattle hatchet. Oh, they're flock owners. I heard somebody say that Estes done the same thing.
Estes? Who's Estes?
They're in Springfield.
And what are they?
That's another hatchery.
Oh, another hatchery.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And they just said no more selling chickens.
Yeah.
That's crazy. My goodness. Well, eventually they're going to stop you from selling milk, and they're going to stop your son from butchering for other people. Because there was one, I don't know if you heard of the Amish guy, I want to say Ohio, but I'm probably wrong about the state. But he was in another state, and he was butchering and selling meat to locals that have always bought from him. And they made him stop, and he went to court. I don't know what happened about that, though, but they wanted to shut him down from selling meat to people, to us, to regular people. I mean, regular people, but non-Amish. They didn't want us to have that food. They want us to eat their food because their food has all kinds of crap in it. They inject their animals like crazy, and they want, if you eat it, you inject it too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting kind of bad. Yeah, it is.
And I was looking forward to getting new chickens again this year. Okay, well, I'm going to go over to the Tractor Supply and see if I can get some out of them. Because if I don't get chickens, we're not going to have no chickens. Wow. And I have incubators. I can incubate them and make more. So, wow, okay. All right, so no milk. So you think, well, we'll just have to come back tomorrow, I think. Because we can't come back at 5. I have an appointment at 3. So I'll probably come back tomorrow.
Tomorrow night, probably better chance because there's 2 other people coming tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay.
Wait till after the milk tomorrow night.
Okay, I'll come back tomorrow night. That'll probably be even better for us. Okay. All right, thank you. It was nice talking to you. So that's the gentleman that runs this farm, the Amish. And yeah, what do you think about that? I came here to buy some chickens because they always sell them around the 1st of July. So I started off asking him, how much are your chickens and when are you going to sell them? He says, well, they don't want us to sell them to people anymore. We've been here for 7 years and every year I buy about 40 to 80 chickens. And he says, yeah, they don't want us to sell them anymore. And I said, why? And he says, well, they just want us to, they came up with some cockamamie story that somebody got chickens from him and resold them and got sick. And that's a bunch of bull crap. Y'all know that. Even he said he didn't believe that, but doesn't matter. The point is, that we don't get to buy chickens anymore. And he said it's for all the farmers out here. Don't get to buy chickens anymore. So I'm going to go to the Tractor Supply and see if they have any chickens left, because that's about our only hope, or we ain't getting no more chickens and we're dependent on them for eggs. All right. Yeah. They're going to control everything and you're going to learn to love it. Isn't that great? All right. Let me go check out Tractor Supply.
Well, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, the world stage is being set. The transitions of power are in play, and they are celebrating this. The world is celebrating this. All right? The world still continues and goes on, even if it's a change for others. Third world countries are waiting to see how America and many others can deal with the optics in play. They're celebrating this, guys, because it's happening and being put in play. The optics are high and in front of our faces every day.